Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast. Today we're going into a topic that in some ways it's a bit of a tough one. It's a heavy one. It's around grief and loss. But when you think about it, it's relevant to all of us because we all lose loved ones. We all will lose someone we love. And I love this conversation with Carol-Anne Schneider. She has done a lot of work around grief, mostly because she's experienced a ton of loss in her life, but she does it with a really hope-filled kind of way. And I think you'll catch that in the conversation. She does tell a story that really was quite interesting. It was a time where her family was looking for me to be able to do the service for her mom before her mom passed away, and she calls it "Get the Minister." And there's a kind of a funny story that I think y'all will appreciate it as well. And it does not happen when we remember people we love. That is part of the good news. That sometimes absolutely makes us sad and feel a sense of loss. But there's also a lot of smiles and laughs too as we remember our life shared. And I think you'll catch a bit of both of that in this conversation. So friends, let's get going. Fasten your seatbelts. Get ready for a really hope-filled ride today. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast, and I'm really excited about the conversation today. This is one that is relevant to everyone because we all lose people we love. It's a part of life. It's a challenging part of life, but we have someone with us today, a good friend, a very strong leader in our community, and certainly glad for the connection that we have. This is Carol-Anne Schneider. And Carol-Anne has been doing a lot of work around her own grief, and I love the way God has brought her through and leading her to help others. So we'll get into that, but maybe just a place to start, Carol-Anne, your own experience of grief and loss, and yeah, how that's been worked out in your own life.
Well, there's been a lot of it, and it's always different. But I feel that it's a personal journey, and there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. There's a lot of books
Mm-hmm.
out there and a lot of advice, and I think that it's something that healing comes with time. I think that's really the only truth about those, the stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me personally, just being able to give myself permission to be sad on those days where I feel sad
Mm-hmm.
and to try to live double is my motto. Live double for those that I've lost because that's what they would want me to do.
What does that look like, living double?
It
Yeah.
just, I include memories in almost everything that we do. And I think that for me, that's the healing part. And it's bringing a little piece of, those loved ones with me on my journey and just remembering the crazy stories they used to talk about and just, doing double for them.
That's cool.
So doing all the fun things that they would want to do or that I would want to do with them. Mostly around family.
So any examples that come to mind in the way that would play out?
Oh my goodness. My parents were, they loved to entertain. And their house was the house that everybody went to. The door was always open. It didn't matter if it was day or night. If you needed a meal, they would put one on the table. My mother was an expert at trying to make a roast beef feed 30. And I think I inherited that from them, that sense of wanting to host and be the hostess and just be surrounded by people and just be joyful and have fun.
Yeah. That's cool. Eh? And I think when you have that mentality, you think of your loved ones who you miss, who you've lost on a day-to-day basis, just as you go about your life, eh? Because as you're talking, like I'm thinking about things that we do because we remember my wife's father passed away just a little over a year ago, Frank, and like not a week goes by that we don't think of him. And so when we say grace, like he was always adamant, being a farmer, recognizing that where food comes from, the work that goes into it, he was always adamant that when you said grace, you said thanks for the food, but also, and thanks for the hands that have prepared it and where it's come from. And so we say that every day at grace, and we think of Frank. It's like a way to double down on it, sort of thing. And yeah, that's a cool way to look at it. I love that.
Yeah, I have, I have this thing. Last night I was up really late. I was wrapping presents. So I was the midnight wrapper. And my dad used to always, he lived with us before he passed for a number of years. And he used to, we bought him Alexa. and he loved Alexa, but it was hilarious listening to him, Alexa, play this or play that. And she couldn't understand his Scottish accent,
Okay.
but she knows his playlist. And so, how I pay honor to him is I often say, Alexa, play the golden oldies from the 1960s.
Mm.
And it's crazy how just hearing that music and thinking about, the times we shared together. I'm often dancing in the kitchen and the family room to my dad's crazy old tunes, right? So, and I think that's
Mhm.
paying honor to him
Yeah,
too,
absolutely.
and the memories of that, because he danced with me in that kitchen a million times.
That's so cool. Yeah, and it really you're blessed in that experience too, eh? You
Oh,
you you
very
you
much so.
feel it's almost like you feel their presence but also like they're good ways to live, like to stop
Oh,
and
for
listen to some music,
sure.
stop and dance, for us to give thanks for like it reminds us in a very intentional way that like I love that was a significant lesson that he taught us, and we kind of keep living into that and are blessed by that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And even, we did an addition to our home when my father came to live with us. And
Mm.
when we were doing that, one of the requirements on his list was, well, we have to have enough room to sit the whole family down for a meal. Because my parents were really big about that.
Yeah.
Like, if we're gonna gather together as a family, let's all sit together. We're not doing this buffet, stand up and eat
Yeah.
your dinner style. So yeah, we have a room that we move the couches out, we rent tables and chairs, and we bring it in, and it can be a banquet hall on the
That's
days where
cool.
we need it to be,
Mhm.
and paying,
Yeah.
tribute. Last year, I found some of my mother's china dishes in the basement. I was like, "Oh, wow." I remember that was like her Sunday best. She would
Mhm.
save it for Sundays and special occasions, and I added to it. So now when we sit down, we pull out my mom's old china mixed in with some of the old pattern that I was able to get
Yeah.
my hands on, and we have like a granny dinner. It's
That's
really
great.
cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you think of her and you feel
Oh,
her
for
presence and
sure.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, that's we'll get into the hope and love some of the things that God has been leading you to do, Carol-Anne. And it's so hopeful having these kinds of experiences where we remember and honor them. There's also a sense of deep loss when we lose someone that we love and don't want to move too far into the conversation without naming and acknowledging that as well. Because, yeah, some people could be listening to this or watching this today who, yeah, that might be where they're at today or right now. And so, as you think about the real loss that you've experienced, which has led to some amazing things in your life, including these kinds of experiences, there's also I know a depth of brokenness, that's been a part of the journey as well. And maybe if we could talk a bit about that, as well, some of the challenges along the way, the tough days that you've had, yeah, because you just miss these great
Yeah.
people who you've been so blessed to share your life with.
Yeah. I think for me, the reality that life is never the same
Mm,
and that you are transforming into a new normal
mm, mhm.
without your loved ones. And there are days where that looks really awful and I cry and the songs that come on the radio, they don't
Mm.
make me dance, they make me
Mhm,
make me
mhm,
weep.
mhm.
Um, and I think what kept me constant or what's helped me when I've got to that very depth of, the despair, because it's really awful,
Mhm, mhm.
is that I remind myself that I'm not going to arrive anywhere, that it is the way that it is.
Mhm,
And you can't shove the sad under the rug
mhm.
because it's going to come up at the least,
Yeah,
sometimes the most inconvenient moments in your life,
absolutely.
you know? And I think just being kind to yourself and
Mhm,
giving yourself permission
mhm,
to not expect to be better
mhm.
because there isn't a better.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a
Mhm,
new broken and it's a new normal.
mhm,
And you just have to, in my opinion, sometimes you have to go with the flow. And if
mhm,
that's a day where you're just like staying in bed with your pajamas on, watching,
mhm.
binging on Netflix and, not caring for yourself, I think that's okay too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I just
I totally agree. Totally agree. I know we lost our son Lucas back July 2000, 2 years old, and it took me several years to catch up to what was happening in the sense of every July, even leading up to July. I couldn't name it, but I just felt this heaviness and I felt this fog, and I wasn't functioning like I normally would, and just everything I did took me longer. It was amazing, and it was probably 3 or 4 years in before I caught the pattern,
yeah,
and it's like, oh, this is what's happening. I am reliving this every year, and that's not bad. It's just real,
that's the
and I kept
reality.
giving myself. I started because, but before I was like, oh, why am I so, and why am I? And it was just like, okay, no, this is. So I would just learn to expect a little less of myself, give myself some space, just recognize that this is the way it's going to be for a few weeks, and that's okay. But it took some time. Like so, I agree with you. I think it's really important to be able to acknowledge and be aware of that, and be okay with that, and just ride it out a little bit, and give yourself some space, like you said, give yourself some grace. That's normal. Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and that is so true.
Hmm.
Like dates are just it's crazy how you are maybe so busy doing things and yet you're off.
Hmm.
I call it off. I'm like, I'm just off today. And
Hmm.
then maybe a glance at the calendar or, something that's coming up, a holiday or
Yeah.
something. And it's like, that's why.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it catches you.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
I think that's the thing about grief is that it's always there
Yeah.
and it's going to catch you, but you have to catch yourself
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and not stay down for too long.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned those days where could be anniversaries. And what I hear from a lot of people, and I think I've experienced myself too, is that the days there's days that you kind of know come, you see them coming. Christmas is coming, their birthday's coming, Mother's Day, Father, sort of thing, and you kind of almost prepare for those days. But it's those days where you don't expect it, where and I know one grief expert said grief is like a tidal wave, like it just kind of washes over you and you barely see it coming. And I think that's very
Yeah.
real. And I hear that a lot, that it's not those days that like I see those coming, I prepare for them. I'm ready to be sad, or I'm ready to maybe
Yeah.
do something to not just be sad, that whatever that might be. But it's those other ones, right? Where
Oh,
those moments
I
where it just
had
hits
one.
you.
I
Did
had
you?
one recently. We
Okay.
were in Vancouver. My sister had lived there when she was alive in Ladner, and she'd moved there when her kids were little. And I was mad at her for moving because my parents were, pining for their grandbabies. And so I boycotted going to Ladner. I'm like, well, I'm not coming there. Why do we always have to, spend our vacations visiting you, which I loved her dearly and wanted to see the kids. And we were in Vancouver going to Victoria to help her son with a move this past summer. And now I'm gonna cry. Um, we were on the highway and there was a cutoff for Ladner. And I just sobbed for the next like 2 hours in the
Really?
car. And I said to Brian, I was like, I can't control it. It's just not stopping. And it was that reality that I'd boycotted and I'd missed out by not visiting her there and paying, and here I was in that spot that she loved and she wasn't with me. And I couldn't go back in
And how
time.
many years would that have
Oh,
been?
my
Like,
sister my sister died in 1994.
yeah. This is
It was a
twice.
long
Wow.
time, and this was
Amazing how deep and real I can
her
see.
middle son was, has been living in Vancouver, and he was moving to Victoria, and we were there to help him with his move, and it was like, wow, like and it did just catch me like that. It was the tidal wave,
Yeah, yeah.
and it just I couldn't control it. My poor husband, he's trying to have me navigate the highway, and I'm like, I don't know which way we're supposed to turn, right? We were supposed to turn to Ladner in 1992 and visit her, and we
Wow.
didn't,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
can't go back there.
No, no. Well, and that's another thing, isn't it? That just how time, you know, people will say things like time heals all wounds, and I mean, there's my experience would be that's not true. Yeah,
Yeah.
God heals. Sometimes people can get worse over time.
Yep.
So there's just not quite that simple, or that there's not a formula to it. It's not quite that. My own experience would be the intensity often has decreased over time for whatever reason. But it amazes me, like, you talk about that experience that was so long ago, but the emotions were still so real today. And there is a
Oh,
sense that
yeah.
because I think people wonder, oh, I can't believe I still feel that way. That happened
Oh,
so long
it
ago,
was
right?
a
But
it was a
what would you
long
say to
time
that? Because
ago.
because it's
Yeah.
still very real. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't work that way. It's not just this
No.
happened a long time ago. I've put it out of my mind. I never think about it again. And that's another part of it's all part of your life
Yeah.
now, even.
And I
Hmm.
was there. And I guess it was a regret.
Yeah.
And I think that's true of grief too.
Yeah.
There's regrets that you have about not saying something or doing
Hmm.
something or taking action when your loved one was alive, and you can't, there's no do-over,
Hmm. Hmm.
so you have to live with it.
So how do you do that? What did you do with that situation? Yeah, this
I
would be
just
great because I
I
think
just
people.
let myself cry, and
Okay.
I couldn't wait until we met up with my sister's son because we were
Mm,
driving in different vehicles. We were driving the
okay.
U-Haul truck,
Yeah.
and I couldn't wait to meet up with him and say, "Wow, you know what? Like,
Did,
your mom is
did you tell them
so."
what had
Oh,
happened?
yeah. I
Yeah.
said, like,
Yeah.
"I just, like,
Yeah.
felt your mom, like, just, like, come through that
Wow.
truck, and she's definitely here with us,
Oh.
She's on this mission with us." And I think that part of maybe why he's there is it's got some good memories
Mm,
from his childhood.
okay. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was a happy time in their life.
Yeah.
My sister was well, she was a young mom, they were, a
Yeah.
family enjoying their life, and
Yeah. What was his response when you told, because so often people don't talk about a loved one, thinking, "Oh, I don't want to bring something up that's going to be hurtful or painful for someone." In this case, your nephew who lost his mom. My sense, my experience is that people actually love it when you talk about someone, but I think sometimes people hold off. They're afraid of that. So I'm just curious. Yeah, what was the
well,
response?
that's one thing that, I think that we learned in time, if
Mm,
there's such a thing.
mm-hmm,
When I was younger and we lost was I lost a cousin when he was young. He was 21 and he, had a blood clot in his sleep and he died. And I was so young and there wasn't a lot of talk about him then. My grandmother died. There wasn't a lot of talk about that. But the more death, I guess, that showed up at our door, the more vocal we became about sharing how we were
okay.
feeling.
Yeah.
My parents were super loving, and we shared. They would say "I love you" all the time, but I think it brought a whole new depth as I aged and
Mm.
as there was more sorrow in our
Mhm.
lives,
Mm.
that we really, shared more.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It,
It
it's
sounds like
it's hard to
you almost became good
explain.
at talking about it
Good at
because you had
talking about
which is
it.
really healthy. Yeah, for sure.
And I
Yeah.
think that you're right. There's a lot of people they don't know what to say, so they don't bring it up,
Yeah.
and um, it's hard to be that person that sits in silence
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
because you want to talk
Yeah.
sometimes, and you're afraid of what other people are going to say or how they're going to
Mhm.
react,
Mhm.
or if you're going to step on their
Mhm.
toes,
Mhm.
or have them feel sad because you don't want to bring that
Mhm.
on them,
Mhm.
but they're already sad,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
it's
No,
okay,
no,
you know.
and even when you've lost someone who you love, like you still enjoy talking about them and remembering them. And I feel like when we help people do that, whether we share some of our memories, or I love asking people questions about, like, what was so and so like, and you could just see people come to life, even in the midst of being broken, like just really sad. They'll shift gears for a moment just to remember, because even though the loss is real, so are the memories, and so is the life that you've had, and that is still there. You haven't lost that. And when people talk about it, you can just see it's almost like resurrection happening in the moment. And it is
Oh,
because you're remembering in a way that you're literally bringing that person back to life for the moment,
yeah.
and
And
you do feel their
that's part of
presence.
the live double.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the doing things that they would like or they would love,
yeah,
because you do feel like you're bringing a part of them with you
yeah,
on your journey of life, because this is the only one we got,
yeah, yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
we have to like live large
Hmm.
and love lots,
Yeah.
because that's really the only thing that I think gets left behind is all of
Hmm.
that unconditional love, and you can channel that into your own life,
Absolutely.
and that's the biggest legacy you can give
Hmm.
them,
Hmm. Yeah.
is showing them that you're a stronger, better person
Yeah.
because of them
Yeah.
and the love they left you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Well, I love one of the things that you've been led to do, Carolyn, through all of this. It's very unique to me, and special to write a book. And I love the title, Good Grief.
Yes?
So yeah, and I just want to say, my sense is one of the places that we find hope is doing things that does honor the people who we've lost, and does help us remember them. And this is a big one. So just, as people are listening to this, like that, this
Yeah.
may not be yours. Don't please know and feel like you got to go write a book. That's the only way to find hope through loss or healing through loss. Everyone will find what fits for their personality, for what they love to do, for their loved one. But in this case, like, this is what you've been led to do, is to write a book called Good Grief. So love to hear how that came
I
about
mean,
and what this is about.
so my parents, well, all of my family, like my aunties, my uncles, they were all such good storytellers.
Okay.
And I could like bend an ear and listen to them for hours and hours. And I wish I'd recorded all the stories,
Mm,
because, wow, even when life wasn't good,
mm-hmm,
they found the good in life.
mm-hmm.
And I think for me, writing this book, which now I'm totally accountable to you to finish the book, which is awesome.
And
Which
everybody
is
else.
which is awesome, and everybody else is
Yeah,
listening. But I
that's
think
awesome.
I think it's to be selfish for a minute, it's kind
Mm,
of my own. It's
okay.
it's it's for me,
Wow.
because I get to write about these people
Mhm,
that I love so much.
mhm.
But I think it's for everybody too. Even if it's only my family that ever gets a copy of the book and reads it. It's leaving behind their stories. It's trying to share a little bit about who they were with the world. And I know you do that with
Mm.
your carnival,
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Like
Yeah,
like that's
yeah,
that's your
yeah.
that's your way of giving back.
Mhm, mhm.
And so this, I think, is my way of giving
Yeah,
back. And I
yeah.
think that there are people that can't talk about grief, that it's
Mhm,
not something that they can share within their family or friends, because everybody handles it so differently. And,
mhm,
some of it's like, oh, don't talk about that here or anywhere. And so it's all bottled up. So hopefully some of my stories
mm.
can help them on their journey wherever they're at with it,
Yeah, yeah.
and maybe give them the courage to find somebody in their
Mhm,
life that they can somebody even like you
mm.
they can share their stories with,
Mhm, mhm,
and
mhm,
talk about it in a way that will help them with their healing.
mhm, mhm. For sure, yeah. So with this particular project, how did the title come? Like, what's Good Grief? It's a very
Okay, so
very
so
interesting.
well, it's kind of ironic,
Yeah.
isn't it? Right? There's nothing good about grief.
Mhm,
But in my own healing journey, what I've realized is that, like, I was gifted so much
mm,
from these people.
mm,
Like, so much good came from all of
mm,
the love that they shared.
mm.
And so I feel that the good in it is that privilege and honor of having them in my life
Yeah.
and being able to share those special moments with them. And if I was looking at my own journey, then that's what really has been my healing, is looking
Mm,
at the good.
mm.
And looking at the gifts, because oh my goodness, there were so many.
Mhm.
Like you're a
Mhm.
gift. You
Mm.
came through
Yeah,
for you
that's how
came
we
as a
got to know
gift
each other.
through grief. And what a crazy story that is.
Well, and what's your title for the first chapter? Because you did share that with me, and I'm
It's
honored.
called
Yeah.
Mary, which is my mother,
Yeah.
and the title is Get the Minister. And here he is right beside me, and I did not know him, but one of my mother's wishes was that Jamie he would minister over her funeral
Mhm.
service, and she didn't know him either,
Mhm.
but she had come to know him through a neighbor. And I came to find him at church one Sunday, many years after my mother had had the conversation with me that
Mhm.
she wanted him to be the minister for her service. And for some crazy reason, maybe God intervened, but the phones weren't working, the email was done, there was no reply, and I was like, "Okay." And my mother was on her deathbed in palliative care, and I
Oh.
was like, "Don't worry, Dad, I'm gonna get the minister." And so
I've got one thing to
I
do.
got one thing to do, and I came to church on that Sunday,
Yeah.
and we had been introduced to Jamie, not formally introduced
Mm.
because we really didn't know him, and I'd
No.
never met him until that day. But he had ministered
Mm.
for a neighbor,
Margot Glue.
for
Yeah. Yeah.
Margot,
Yeah.
and I walked into the church trying to be, like 007 and not be noticed and hide in the back and hopefully nobody will see me here, and sobbed like crazy.
Mm.
And of course, the sermon of the day
Yeah.
was how to be a good neighbor. And my mother's neighbor had led us to the
Oh my
church.
gosh.
And I thought, well, if there was divine intervention, it's happening here now.
Wow.
And this is definitely the minister that has been called to our family and to do my mother's service.
Amazing. Eh? Like that's just one piece of this story, one chapter in
Yeah,
this
just one
book.
little
But there's
piece.
so many pieces to it that you're right. Like
Oh, yeah.
yeah, not to diminish the loss of missing your parents, and your sister, and Margot, like the list goes on.
Yeah.
But it is definitely a very real part of life. And if we move through it in a way that God leads us and is healthy, we can find healing and hope along the way. And grief can be
Yeah.
good because there's so much goodness in just that one little chapter, one piece of the story.
And even you may not remember, but I remember the service, and I remember you not knowing my mother, but actually putting together a service that
Mm,
was perfect for
mm,
her.
mhm,
And it was about I I I don't know if you recall, but you were talking about 2 toys
mm,
and
mm,
2 kids being given
mm,
toys, and
mm,
one box being empty and the other
okay.
box being full,
Mm,
and my mother was able to take the empty and still
mm,
see the good in it.
amazing.
So maybe good
Yeah.
grief came from maybe some of it came from that, but
Who knows, eh?
that was, you talked about despite what, my mother was served in life,
Mm,
she managed to see the
mm,
hope in
amen.
it,
Yeah. Yeah.
even in the loss.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, is something that I've inherited or
I was gonna say no wonder,
tried to live
right?
out on, to honor her.
That's awesome. No wonder you're doing it too, eh? When you think just even putting
Oh
all
my
that together, it's
goodness.
so
There's so
so
many
so
stories.
cool.
There's
Yeah.
so many. I mean, and I think the good part is that we don't often even understand the impact we have on others.
No, no.
And my parents and all of my loved ones really impacted me and my life. And I make decisions every day based on, what would they do about this? And what would they do about that? And uh, that is that's just part of them still kind of being around. I
Mhm.
still, I talk about it all the time. I say there's angels among us, and here they
Yeah.
are, and the little neighborhood fox walks by, and I'm like, yeah, Dad, I know you sent him to say hello today, and I always say, when I get to heaven, I'm gonna have really big wings because there's gonna be a really big party, and and they're all gonna be there,
Mm,
and we're all gonna be able to
yeah.
reunite.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So just with the book then, what are some of the other chapters? What are some of the other
Well,
elements to the Good Grief
so
book?
after I'd lost my dad and I was having a really hard time restarting, I started doing this process of like, get up, Carol-Anne, you have to go back to work. Like,
Mm,
you have to figure this out. You have to figure out this coping piece. And my dad was my person. And, you know, we'd been through a lot together. Like he'd been my partner in all of the other loss. And he was just this incredible man, and he'd shown me in the last 3 years of his life after a cancer diagnosis that you're supposed to live in the moment,
mm,
and he showed me that, like, he did that. His last 3 years of his life, you wouldn't have known he was battling cancer because he was just so joyful
mm,
with every minute of every day, and so I started to journal, and was writing down before I was born, like all the memories that they had told me in the stories about before I was born. My grandmother owned this candy shop, and she was the one that convinced my dad to come to Canada, and my dad getting his first mortgage on a handshake, and all of these things.
mm,
Um, and I was like, "Wow, that's crazy." And then I started to try to put my own, life in order based on
okay.
age. 0 to 5, what were my first memories,
Wow.
5 to 10, what were my memories? And when I finished it, I circled all the names of a lot of my loved ones that had been lost
Mm,
at a young age, and
mm,
I was like, "Wow, there is a theme here."
mm,
Like, and the theme is big, and it's loss, and it's heavy, um, and look at all of these times you've had to come from broken and
mm,
try to figure out living
mhm,
in the
mhm,
now,
mhm, mhm.
and that's where the book came from, because then
Mm,
I gave myself permission to, well, if there was one thing that you could do with this one wonderful life that you have,
mm,
what would it be? And it was like, good grief.
mm,
Like, I gotta write a book about all of these loved ones. And so
mm.
all the chapters are about all of them.
Okay.
Every
Wow.
chapter is for
Wow.
one of them.
I could see where that would be so healing for you, but also like people who will be reading it, that it's going to make them think of loved ones in their life as well, eh? And yeah,
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 it's just a collection of stories, really. I'm not a grief expert,
mhm,
although if they were giving out
mm,
degrees and you had to, go through a number of them
yeah,
to get a
yeah,
degree, then I would say that the University of Life has
yeah,
given me
yeah,
one with
for
an
sure,
honors in grief and
yeah,
healing. Um, and I think that that's, just realizing that,
absolutely,
and
yeah,
that I've been so it's in everybody's life.
yeah, yeah,
But when I looked at the list, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like there's so much of it."
yeah,
And so many young people,
mm, mhm,
people that didn't get to live to their 80s,
mhm, mhm,
or
mhm,
70s.
mhm,
And just thinking about that, and how important it is for me to share
mm,
a little piece of them,
mm,
and
absolutely.
maybe it's a movement. Maybe good grief is a movement.
Yeah, yeah, who know
Who
that's the thing, I
knows?
mean, you say yes to that, which you have, which is
Yes,
awesome, and
absolutely.
then you never know where that might
You
you
never
never
know
know where
where
it
it's
might
gonna
lead,
go.
and at the end of the day, whatever happens, you're going to experience blessing and healing just by doing it
Oh,
for sure. No, and I think you're right, Carol-Anne, like, you have gone through so much, and the way that you have processed it in a very healthy way, that your offering of this, I think, will be very helpful for people. Yeah, sometimes people's best practices and what's worked for them, which is be part of what will be coming out of this book, I think will be really helpful for people. So thanks so much for having the courage to not only take this project on, but talk about it publicly so that there is accountability. As you say, that's great.
yeah, no,
And
I've got
loving it.
about 5
Oh,
chapters.
good for you. Good for
I
you.
have a lot more, but
Well,
it's easier to do things like that
yeah,
now. There's
yeah,
self-publishing, and,
absolutely.
and all
Yeah,
of that stuff, and
yeah.
like I said, even if it's
Well,
only my family that reads it, I'm cool with that.
oh, I hear
It's a
you.
legacy I can leave them,
Yeah,
all the old stories.
for sure, for sure. Well, want to pray for you before we close, just for this book as we get resource. But before we do that, let's do a little good news
Okay,
podcast rapid fire here to
okay.
close it off. So, what's the best thing going on in your home and your family these
Oh
days?
my goodness. So we have little people around, and so that's wonderful. My niece, her little girl is awesome, and she's coming over for the holidays. And my other niece, my sister's little grandson, he's just so sweet. He's 2.5 and smart as anything. So, we get to have kids around, which is really joyful, and it
Mm,
brings out the best in all of
mhm,
us.
mhm, mhm. Very cool. What's the best thing going on in your neighborhood, in your community these days?
Well, I have an awesome street and wonderful
Mm,
neighbors, and we all support each other. Over the summer, we had lots of potlucks and gatherings, which was really awesome. And, I just think we live in a really great community,
mm.
and we have some really friendly neighbors all around Brampton.
So important. I think it's one of the most important things we can do is as neighbors, just spend time getting to know each other. That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, last one. Best thing going on in the world these
Oh my
days.
goodness. So my mother used to always say that she prayed for peace. We would say, "What do you want for Christmas?" And as a
Hmm.
6-year-old, you wanted to know her slipper size, and she would say, "I want peace." And
Hmm.
I didn't really understand what that was.
Hmm.
And the older I got, the more I recognized and
Hmm.
realized that what she was asking for. And I think that the world is starting to see more of that,
Hmm. Hmm.
that COVID did a lot
Hmm.
for us to, forced us to seek inner peace within
Hmm.
ourselves and see how we could
Hmm.
come out into the world.
Hmm.
I think that's what's going on
Mm,
now.
beautiful, beautiful. Well, let's keep praying for that one and living into that one together for
Yep.
sure. Love it. Thanks, Carolyn. So good to be with you today, and really appreciate you being a part of the Good News Podcast. And love what God's doing in your life. Hmm. Hmm.
Very blessed.
Mm.
And I'm so glad that I came to find you
Me
that
too.
day. It
Me too. Me too.
was a long time
That was
ago. It was
yeah.
2010.
Yeah, awesome. Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, let's pray to close. That's so cool. Yeah. Oh God, yeah, lots to give thanks for here. Lots to give thanks for. And so we do. We give you thanks and praise. We think about the people who we have been so blessed to have as part of our life, who we've lost. That great cloud of witnesses that continues to cheer us on, and just thanks for the way that Carol-Anne is living through loss, but also helping others find healing and hope. And may this book, Good Grief, give her all that she needs to carry it out, to write and put it together. And we know that she and her family will be blessed, but we trust that others will be as well, that people will see their own lives, own stories, own loved ones in this, and also find healing and hope through it. So thank you for the opportunity to talk together about something so very real, and for the way that you absolutely can rise up through loss and bring your resurrection hope and new life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thanks again, Carolyn. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you everyone for being a part of the conversation today. Always good to be with you. God bless you, and hope to see you again real soon. Well, I told you it'd be a mixture of emotions on that one, but isn't that real? Like, so authentic. That's life. We have every day. We have things that make us experience emotions on all sides, laughter and joy, but also sadness and tears. And that's life. That's a part of life, especially when we're remembering people who we loved. I love that conversation with Carol-Anne. What a beautiful spirit God has given her, and love that idea of living double, of honoring our loved ones by just doing little things day to day that help us remember them, that honor them, that bring them back to life, and would encourage us to think about that in our own lives. Who when we think about the people that we've lost and still love, what are things that we do that remind us of them, that help us to be intentional, to live double, that we're blessed as we do. I just love that idea. And then it's just amazing to me that she has been led, Carol-Anne has been led by God to write a book, to put a resource together, to collect some of her memories and thoughts and put them down in a way that will not only help her and her family, but hopefully others as well. What a great title, Good Grief. That grief can be good. It can be hopeful. It can be healing. And I hope and pray that that's all part of what you've experienced in this conversation today. Friends, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Good News with Jamie Holtum, And just want to let you know, next week's conversation, it's a beauty. It's with a beautiful man, an amazing person, Chef D, Daryl Fletcher. And what a story, what a man of faith. I think you'll really enjoy that. So I hope you can join us next week for that conversation. God bless you, friends. God be with you. And always good to have you part of the Good News Podcast family. Hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much.